Why is banking as a service so hot right now?
Yeah, that's completely true. Every company is striving to become a fintech company.
I think the demand for instant gratification is because we live in a digital world today.
Okay. All right. Hey, everybody. Glad that you're here. Happy Thanksgiving. Wife has now reminded me 3 times today that it's Thanksgiving, as this is the second recording that I'm doing this morning. But don't worry, I intend to spend the rest of the day napping on the couch and eating like crazy. Folks, let us know where in the world you're at. So over in the comments section, ask us questions. Let us know where you're at in the world. We'll definitely give you a shout out. Also, most importantly, click on that little share button. I just did that. Let your LinkedIn network know, for those that are bored or stuck at a family's home where they're trying not to talk politics and are watching this. Click on those share, celebrate, like buttons that are down there like crazy. And like I said, let folks know that you're watching this. And let's go ahead and dive right in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 9 of 11 of Best Spotlight. In this weekly show, we shine a spotlight on the best and the brightest in the tech and financial services industry to try and understand what gets them going, growing, and what they think the future of the industry will look like. Don't forget to give us a follow on LinkedIn so you never miss an episode. We have also just released episode 3 of our outstanding new documentary series about banking as a service. So subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. Go to bit.ly/decoding BAAS to find out more. And the link to the series will also be in the comments section. So that's bit.ly/decoding BAAS. Now, in today's Spotlight, I'm delighted to be joined by Billy Simmons. She's the co-founder and chief of staff at Daylight. We're going to be talking about what it takes to create the first LGBTQ banking platform and how Billy is leading inclusion in the financial services industry. Happy Thanksgiving, Billy. How are you?
Happy Thanksgiving, Sam. I'm very well, thank you. I have everyone downstairs cooking Thanksgiving dinner for me, and this is a great excuse to not have to help out.
All right, so let's go ahead and get this over with because Will White is out there. Hello, Will. I miss you. I love you.
Hi, Will.
So Will White, everyone, one, talking about banking as a service, you should reach out to Will. He's brilliant. 2, evidently Billy and Will shared a flat for a little while in New York. So she understands this. I guarantee you right now, Will is wearing a white shirt, button down, khaki pants, white socks, and is probably on a bike.
Yep.
Yeah, that was easy.
Can guarantee I lived with him essentially for 2 weeks, and there was not a single day, I believe, that he didn't wear a white shirt. I think he might have worn a blue shirt one day when he maybe ran out. But
yeah, that was a white shirt that he had washed himself with something that was blue, probably a pair of socks. That's the honest to God truth. That's what happened there. I guarantee it. So Billy won. That is not a Brooklyn accent, everybody. So let's start of where are you from originally and a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I was born in Pittsburgh, so I am a US citizen, just in case anyone was wondering if I'm here legally.
That is a Pittsburgh accent, if I've ever heard one. That is the west side of Pittsburgh, everybody.
But I have British parents, and so after about a year of Pittsburgh, I moved back to the countryside near England, near Oxford in England, which is where I grew up, hence the very not Pittsburgh accent.
Very, very nice. And we have some folks that are on the show from England, just so you know. Anamine, how you doing? Let us know what part of England that you're in. We actually have somebody all the way from Spain. I love that. And we have
Nice.
Will, who's, I don't know where Will's at. I'm going to guess Brooklyn or Queens or something like that, bouncing around. So Billy, let's talk a little bit about Spotlight. One, where did the idea of Spotlight? That's what we're doing. Daylight. God, the names are way too close. I love the name. And when we get to it, Brandon and me mean a lot. So I do love the name. By the way, I think it's fantastic. Fantastic brand name. But where did the idea come from? Can you talk about the origin story a little bit?
Sure. So, banking for LGBT people isn't necessarily, a completely brand new idea. So it's sort of floated around in a number of people kind of peripherally involved with this project's heads for a while. I met Rob, my co-founder, on stage at Google. We're both working on our own startups at the time. We were talking about mental health. Both of our startups kind of dealt with mental health for LGBT people. And we clicked very well. We had a very short conversation. And that was kind of that for about 6 months. And then I got a call from Rob, and he asked me to do some like UX user testing, and just chat with one of his associates to talk about my experiences in the financial industry. For anyone that isn't aware, I am a trans woman, and so I have a lot of thoughts about inclusion, obviously, about inclusion for trans people, especially in banking, and so talked the poor person's ear off for about, I think, 2 hours in the end, when it was only meant to be a half an hour call, and so Rob and our sort of venture lab, Vacuum Labs, had been kind of working on this very early iteration. It was called something else at the time. And trying to figure out like what banking for LGBT people actually looks like. There is a lot of examples of incumbents and neobanks trying to do stuff for the LGBT community and ultimately failing. Wanting to go a lot deeper. And then it happened very serendipitously. I remember seeing a LinkedIn post from Rob and going onto that website and thinking, there's a lot of potential here. I really, I wish there was something for me to get involved with. And didn't message anyone, didn't act on it that day. And then literally the next day, Rob sent me a message and said, "Hey, let's figure out how to get you in, because I just listened to your UX interview, and like clearly you have a lot to give in this area." And then it's kind of been that was June, and so it's coming up to sort of nearly 5 months now. And it's been kind of a wild ride ever since. We've slowly iterated on the idea and really done literally thousands of user experience interviews at this point, and really boiled down kind of what exactly LGBT people need and what's going to actually solve their pain points. So last Wednesday was the relaunch and kind of full announcement of Daylight and our full proposition and our partnership with Visa.
So, and Billy, thanks for giving the background on that. So I was going to ask, why specifically this space for you? You did mention that. So Rob is an Aussie, right? Did I hear that right?
Yes.
Your co-founder. Okay. What was the hook for Rob? Why is he interested in this space so much?
So he's a gay man, and he has been building LGBT businesses for a number of years now.
Billy, I was actually asking on the financial services side. The gay part I definitely get, but why banking? Oh my God, what a nightmare! As someone who's in this space, but is he been around fintech? Is that his background? Yes,
I believe he has banking experience, and I think for both of us, it's very firmly hand in hand, kind of. It's an LGBT proposition as well as a fintech proposition, right? Both of us have a lot of our experiences with money have shaped our lives and our experiences as LGBT people. These are things that we can't ignore. So it just
Here's something I'm remembering a conversation I actually had with Will. Will is getting way too much attention on this, but he's so happy right now. He's in Mexico City right now, Billy, by the way. So he's in shorts, but I guarantee you the shorts are khaki, everybody. But I remember the first time I met Will, it was in London, and we were having a conversation, and we were talking about banking in the US. And he said, "Sam, if I was launching a product, especially in New York or, San Francisco, you take your pick in the US. If you wanted to have an instant community, if you did it in the LGBTQ community, the concept of community is just threaded and is inherent to the DNA of that community. I mean, it just flat out is. And he said you would have a distinct advantage from that standpoint in doing that. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The LGBT community is a very unique community, and it's a very broad community. But by and large, we are very self-organizing. I met Rob at an Out in Tech event, which is an LGBT sort of tech professionals event that I think has about 50,000 very active members, holding events all across the globe. I think people are very aware of certain aspects of how their identity sort of affect their life when it comes to being LGBT. What's been kind of interesting in sort of our experience going through this process has been not a lot of LGBT people are very acutely aware of how their being LGBT affects their finances.
Oh, yeah. Good point. Can you give us a couple of those? And again, I love that both you and Rob, from a personal experience level, have that. To me, the best solutions that are out there, the best products, are when it's part of your personal history, right? It's something that you've lived through. So it's not like you are coming up with use cases. You can literally just look back to last week and go, oh, there you go. There's another one. Can we talk about some of the uniqueness there, right? Especially when it comes to banking, when it comes to financial services. What are some of those unique challenges that face the community?
Yeah. Ultimately, it boils down to it costs more to be LGBT. So, throughout our lives, we have high one-off costs. Some good examples of this are it costs on average $55,000 to have a child for an LGBT couple, to conceive a child, versus, for most non-LGBT couples, essentially free. Trans people to have gender affirming surgeries could cost up to $100,000. We have more student debt. We have lower mortgage approval rates. It's between 3 to 8% lower for LGBT people. And that means that home ownership for LGBT people is 30% lower than non-LGBT people. And sort of throughout our lives, we also struggle to play catch up. We have lower levels of financial literacy, and we also have less family support. There's a very high rate of LGBT people when they come out lose all of their family support and that kind of larger network of support that a lot of people, when times get tough, that's who they have to rely on. And that, the number is 50%, nearly 50% of LGBT people struggle to maintain regular savings. It's, it sort of happens throughout our lives at different points. It's really hard for us to reach equity with non-LGBT people. And cumulatively, the effect on LGBT wealth creation means that 50% of non-LGBT people, 50% of LGBT people versus 34% of non-LGBT people are worried about having enough money to retire on. So, it affects pretty much every stage of your life. It affects your ability to reach or achieve the life milestones that a lot of people just sort of take for granted. And it's sort of, I think as people are going through those processes, they're saying, oh, I want to have a child. Okay, surrogacy costs $130,000. How are we going to find $130,000? And at that point, there's that aha moment. But by the time that you want to have a kid, it's probably too late to start saving up $130,000.
Yeah.
As a trans woman, I've experienced that. When I decided to transition, it's super expensive. And nothing is really covered by traditional health insurance. And I put myself massively into credit card debt that I'm still paying off to this day, because no one really prepares you for the financial realities of being LGBT until now.
So it's Thanksgiving to our international audience right now. So this is traditionally the holiday where you, even more so than Christmas, where you're with family. and Billy, I actually saw a post on Twitter this morning that kind of made me tear up a little bit. It was a young person who said, "This is the first time I am going to be coming in as a woman with my family today. Pray for me." And I thought about that. I was like, damn, that is. Now I'm hoping, that they have an incredibly supporting family, but still, right? That one was tough when I read it this morning.
Yeah. I mean, the holiday season is really tough for a lot of LGBT people. We have, a lot of us have to create our own families. I personally am very lucky to, have the support of my biological family. But it's still tough. It's still a difficult process. Families are big. Not everyone in your family is going to, understand and support you. I think this time is especially difficult.
So I was waiting for this question to come up, and I love this. This is from Professor Kathy Lloyd. She's professor of health studies, and you're smiling, so I'm guessing it might be someone you know. But Professor Lloyd,
that's my mother.
Oh my God! All right, Mom, I love you even more. So we're gonna give Professor Kathy Lloyd a shout out for one being so supportive, and a great question about. But can you say something about name changing and why that's prevalent? Billy and I were talking about this before the show because I was saying I was trying to think of other financial service products that are like Daylight, and we will get into the name of it and everything else. But I struggled a little bit. The only thing I could think of was Citi and the True Name card or the True Name product that they had talked about. Let's go ahead and go there. It's Thanksgiving, Billy. Give me your assessment of what Citi has launched.
I've tried out the product. Citi was one of the only banking products that I couldn't update my name on previously because it was an incredibly difficult and complex process, way more so than some of the other banking products. I think that the intention is there.
Yeah.
And I think really, where it falls short, I actually tweeted about this. So, I'm not totally stepping out of line to talk about this. But I updated my name on their system and went back to the homepage and was immediately dead named. So, and dead naming means, using the name I used before I transitioned. And, what that ultimately exposes is that incumbents don't really have the ability to make large, sort of end-to-end changes to their systems. We know that. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We've got all these COBOL cowboys having to come out of retirement and fix their systems. But, I then received a bunch of emails in my dead name too. And so, it's clear that while it is a really great start, it's not there. And it seems kind of clear to me that there are limitations that incumbents have in their ability to affect large structural change. I don't ever want to, be a downer on people trying to do stuff. I'm sure it was really hard to get that change through. But for me, it just ultimately misses the mark. It doesn't quite get there.
It makes me wonder. And I don't know. And Citi, the team at Citi is a good friends of LeftFS, good friends of mine. I know them incredibly well. It does make me wonder, though, when you get back to the product team makeup, right? When they were designing this, how diverse was that team? Did they have anyone that actually represents you, for example? I don't know, so I'm going to be careful on judging on that. But I would agree with you. It makes me wonder. Other than positioning and trying to do something right. That's one thing, but what did the team look like that was doing this, right? How representative was it? I don't know.
Yeah. And who had the decision-making power? Because that's the other thing. I think, diverse hiring is great, but if you're not backing that up with elevating those people into positions of power and actually, making sure that they can have an impact, even when I, joined at Daylight, that sort of core proposition was there. We are offering trans and non-binary people, or indeed anyone that wants it, a name on their card that doesn't have to match their legal identity. But a part that was missing was thinking about, how do we want to be able to offer the ability to have first and last names on card? A lot of trans and non-binary people. Actually, I should stop saying that. Really, it's across the LGBT spectrum. A lot of LGBT people don't identify with their surname or their last name either. And that was something that hadn't been thought through, because up until that point, there were no trans people on the team. And, I'm lucky enough to have been elevated into a position where I can say these things, and then, I'm listened to, and we can enact change because I have a wonderful co-founder and a wonderful team. But yeah, I wonder too. And even if there were trans people or LGBT people in that team, were they able to actually say, okay, this isn't enough?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an incredibly good point. And I like what you just said. There's a couple of things that are incredibly important there, right? It's you need representation and you want the diversity, but leadership is everything too, right? Which is great, because when we're talking about Daylight, so let's circle back to Daylight. So we got two great co-founders here. One, let's talk about the name. I already gave you a props on a wonderful name of a product. The branding matters, people. I love what Jason Bates, who's one of our co-founders, 11FS, says, which is you want to have it kind of feel like a verb, right? Something that's actionable. Don't kill yourself too much in coming up with a name. So let's talk about the naming convention. When did you arrive at that, and what does it stand for?
It was a really long process. We had, an amazing branding and naming team. I'll give them a shout out, Lloyd Blander and Jasmine Tennessee, who we brought in to just, take where we had initially landed and kind of just turn it completely on its head. And they did an amazing job. And I think we started at about 300 names, and slowly, brought it down to a final, I think there was a final 20. And then, the lawyers looked it through and checked what we could actually trademark and that kind of thing. And, we arrived at kind of 3. And something that really resonated with me when we were trying to decide, because it's really hard, right? Like it feels like, and it is a huge decision, because we've done one rename and rebrand. We don't really want to have to do another ever, because every time you do, you lose all of your brand awareness and trust and all this kind of stuff. So I believe it was Lloyd that said, what name can you stand up on stage and say, hi, I'm the co-founder of X? And for us, for Daylight represents a whole bunch of different things. We like to say, LGBT people are everywhere the light shines. There is this pervasive idea that LGBT people aren't everywhere. And, recent polling suggests there's about 30 million of us in the US, which is more people than there are in Australia. So, we are everywhere, we exist. It's also, a nod to positivity, shining a light on your finances, like this whole idea of transparency and supporting each other and, being uplifting. And then obviously, we're an LGBT company. There's a sort of slight nod to, light, refraction, rainbows. Like it's not too heavy-handed in that way. But, there's also a kind of nod there. So it just works on so many levels. And yeah, and you're right. It kind of, it's able to be a sort of, it's become bigger than that, just that word now.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love the name of it. When I first saw the story, I was like, it's really good. Well done. It's something that just clicks, especially when you had a tagline of something along the lines of trying to bridge or address that gap that exists for this community when it comes to financial services. And I love the concept of Daylight and exposing that. And I also love that you said that, the reality is, when you gave that stat about just the sheer number of folks within this community. I'm older, so I'm in my 50s, but I told Billy this. I served on submarines back in the mid 80s. I say that every show because it makes me more interesting to everyone. But the very first day when I was 19 years old and I went on that submarine, I was sat down by some of the crew and they said, all right, Sam, that's Bob. And they pointed to the guy in the back and they go, he's our gay. This is 1986, everyone. That's Bob. He's our gay. None of us have a problem with it. Either do you, or you can leave. That was 1986 on a submarine, and he wasn't the only individual that served on the boat who was, by the way, outstanding. The reality is this isn't new. It's that's like daylight, right? Just shedding more light on it. This is something that has existed forever and a day.
Yeah.
It is reality. So get over it, everybody. But a great question from Milton Keynes. Oh my God, Milton Keynes. There's memories of Sam Mall going to the Milton Keynes train station when I worked at TSYS. This is from Tanameme. I love this question. I hadn't thought about it. Is there a need for real-time KYC voice face recognition, especially during the transition period, or just notice to banks to support the transition period? And there's a use case I hadn't thought of. It's a good question.
Yeah, and it's something that we've thought a lot about as well. Part of to us, I talked about this a little bit with the idea of names on cards, but it's about thinking of the whole process end to end, and actually building this with members of the community, and hearing them and watching them experience these things. And trans and non-binary people often fail KYC processes because they either have mismatched identity documents. I've experienced this when I updated my name and gender legally. I suddenly have 2 credit scores, and so thus I have lower credit because all of my kind of history and things like utilization and all that kind of stuff is fragmented and is not. This is super nerdy, and I'm kind of outing myself as a bit of a loser here, but I spent a whole day a few weekends ago just going through all of my credit reporting, software options and all that kind of stuff, and trying to get an actual picture of what my credit score looks like. And no product is able to actually get all of my credit cards and debt and history fully.
Who I'm going to introduce you to right after this show? Let's just go ahead and get this out of the way. Ken Lin, he's the founder of Credit Karma. This should be a conversation. I had never thought about that as a use case. It's a great point. And by the way, nerdy, you're on a podcast that's focused on fintech. Okay, you've got people from. I'm
amongst friends.
You are. Everyone's like, when do we get to the nerdy part? The more niche of a use case you can get to, the happier this crowd is. Let me just go ahead and say that. Get that out of the way. Yeah, I had never actually thought of that. That's a use case that I never would have come up with. The fact that you're going to have 2 credit scores, which, by the way, makes zero sense because here in the US, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not like your Social Security number changed.
Nope, it doesn't. And that's what's so bizarre about it.
That makes,
for some reason, it's pegged to your name.
It makes zero sense. That is the dumbest effing thing I've ever heard of in my life. I just thought of that. So if I legally change my name, right? If I just don't like my name and I change it, I'm going to have 2 credit. I'm going to have to dive into that. I never even thought of that. God, that's just stupid. Sorry. But I'll go ahead and state that. All right. So let's get into the $1,000, $1 million question everyone's going to ask, because this is the hard part of doing products like this in the challenger banks, for example, is what makes you unique. So obviously you do have a distinct advantage of a community that's already close knit. We've already talked about that. That's one thing, but your service offerings have to be good, right? The product has to be good, flat out, and the service offerings have to be good. So what makes Daylight unique? What can you offer to this community that is unique for them and will help them specifically?
Yeah, I think it's really important, right? Like, I guess one of the benefits of having a really concentrated community and audience for our product is that we can build quite niche things and really get deep into what their pain points are and, how we can solve them in a way that, if you're building a sort of broad neobank, it's hard to really get some of that data. So I'll walk you through kind of our sort of our 3 key areas. So we have, core neobanking features, of course, things like analytics on spending habits, goals, that kind of thing. We also have access to financial coaches who are also LGBT through the app. So, all of this stuff kind of helping you get your finances in shape and help your financial literacy, and also help you heal your relationship with money. I think something that we've seen a lot from the community is there's a really emotional connection to money. And I think that exists sort of broadly across the entirety of probably the US, but especially in the LGBT community, we have very difficult relationships with money, largely for the pain points, largely for the reasons that I pointed out before, with kind of the different pain points throughout our lives. And then the second area is, community. So we have a community area. People can connect with other members of the LGBT community, get peer advice from people who have been there, or maybe going through the same thing. Because something else that we're seeing is a lot of this stuff is really lonely, especially if you don't live in a metropolitan area, especially if you are not an extrovert who likes to drink. There is, it's really hard to connect with members of the community. As well as that, we also have educational resources. So, a lot of these processes, like how to navigate adoption or how to transition, these are really confusing things to go through. And so, providing educational guides to walk you through both the sort of logistical areas as well as the financial areas, and as well as, core financial education content, which we're working with our partners Visa on. And then finally, it's just about empathy. So kind of what I was talking before about names on cards, understanding the whole process end to end, because we are a team of all LGBT people and we've all lived these pain points. It also, I guess, feeds into the, the financial coaches, being able to talk to someone who is part of the community. You get to skip so much of that initial getting to know you period. There's no, again, something that we've heard a lot from people is when you're delving into your finances, it's obviously a very personal thing. And, having to explain different areas of your lifestyle to someone who is not part of that community is kind of, a lot of emotional labor and takes a lot of time. And, financial coaches are not, super cheap. And so kind of being able to skip a lot of that stuff and have that shared language and community is really important. So yeah, so, neobanking for us is kind of the core of it. And, and there's not necessarily a ton of innovation there. And it's about all of the services that we're kind of bolting onto that.
So just so you're aware, your mother downstairs is dropping drip on you like crazy. In the comment section, she put, I know Billy's credit history. So when this is done, you need to go have a talk with mom downstairs. And Will White down in Mexico City has been dropping some knowledge bombs in the comments too. I want to touch on real quick. Will said there's complications with growing old and retiring as LGBTQ. There's no roadmap on how to grow old as an LGBTQ person, and we're more likely to want to retire in expensive cities for mental safety. Man, that's a good point. I had never thought of that, Will, and I get that. That does make sense. And then he also said CAC is a lot lower, customer acquisition cost, folks, is a lot lower into a community because they've already organized and you earn the permission to cross-sell once you earn a community's trust. Amen on that last part. And that's earned, by the way. Right.
100%.
Gimmick products are just that. They're gimmick products. For something like Daylight, you need to have, this needs to have longevity, right? Which means you need customers, which are important for you. And that trust component does mean, it means everything. But I'd also add, and you politely drop that in there, but you do have a partnership with Visa. I mean, that's credibility, right? That flat out just is.
Yeah, I mean, Visa have been amazing. They're a great company. Obviously, they have a ton of reach. They're the largest payments provider in the US, but they don't have any LGBT focused products. Their competitors do, and they have a HRC score of 100, which means they are supporting and providing for their LGBT employees. As well as that, they have their ERG, which is Employee Resource Group, for LGBT people is about 1,000. So, there's a ton of LGBT people in-house at Visa, and we've just received, the warmest welcome. And it's been amazing to, we've kind of experienced this with everyone that we've partnered with, but especially with Visa. You start, you're visible as an LGBT company, and suddenly all of the LGBT people pop out of the woodwork, and they're like, I want to work on this. Like, how can I help? What do you need? Like, just name it, we'll do it. And Visa have, I said earlier, they're helping us with educational content and resources. We're also on their FinTech Fast Track program, and helping kind of lead the way for LGBT financial inclusion, or indeed just for LGBT inclusion across all of the companies on the FinTech Fast Track program. We've even talked to them about, very, very early stages, but, even just the ability to have these discussions openly, about things like credit scores and how we can maybe build something to help, match credit scores together. There's, in general, and this is a quality that I value a lot from people in general, but the ability to kind of admit where you haven't necessarily got there yet, and be really open to hearing differing opinions and different stories, and then being really pragmatic about it and being like, okay, what can we do to fix this and support you? And Visa have been amazing.
Well, I'm very intrigued by the company. I love it. I think, I actually kind of blasted it out on my breakfast brief this morning, talking about the story, because it's a breath of fresh air. I mean that politely. And we're seeing more and more of that right now in the US, in my opinion. You've got, for example, Greenwood Bank, which is focused on the Latino and Black community. That has come out. We're seeing, again, products like this that, the thing that I admire now even more is if you look at the leadership team behind, and I'll say Greenwood Bank is a good example. Let's take Daylight. If you look at the leadership team, these are folks that this affects their lives, just flat out. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's the best type of management team you're going to get, because the commitment there is everything. I'm thrilled to see that you got a partnership with Visa for this. Wish you all the best on this, and we need to wrap. Unfortunately, this goes really quick because I can smell the turkey downstairs. It's killing me. I've been sitting at this desk all morning. My wife's like, it's Thanksgiving. Knock it off. So that said, Billy, thanks for joining me. Where's the best place, one, for people to reach out to you if they have more questions and engage with you, and then also Daylight?
Sure. I guess if we're streaming on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn is just Billy Simmons. Feel free to reach out to me there. My Twitter, I have a terrible Twitter handle. It's like Billy _Simmons_, and I've never changed it because I'm not a very good Twitterer. But yeah, I'm always open. I'll chat to anyone. Especially founders who are from underrepresented communities, especially from the LGBT community, and especially from the trans community, and especially from trans people of color. There's not enough of us doing anything in this space, or even in kind of the startup world. For Daylight itself, our website is joindaylight.com. Our Twitter is joindaylight.com. And yeah, come see what we're doing. We've got a wait list. We start rolling out access to the app at the end of December. And yeah, super excited.
And don't forget Professor Kathy Lloyd over in the UK, everybody.
My biggest fan.
Let's up her followers. Reach out to her on LinkedIn.
Yeah. she's a leading epidemiologist in diabetes. So
oh my God. Yeah, so we were going to get her on the show.
Yeah, you should.
That would be
She'll have a lot to say.
Oh, nothing wrong with that. All right, folks, that's it for this week. But don't miss our other live show, Newsroom, which goes live on Tuesdays at 3:30 p.m. GMT. That's 10:30 a.m. Eastern time here in the U.S. In Newsroom, we take a deep dive into the biggest news story of the week every single week. Make sure you follow us on LinkedIn so you never miss an episode. Also, go out on YouTube and look at our channels. There's just great material out there, folks. And again, the link to all of our latest stuff is in the comments. Everyone, enjoy your Thanksgiving. Have a great week, and we'll see you later. Thanks.
Thank you.